A little girl blew bubbles to calm a boy in crisis. Unaware his millionaire CEO dad was watching, and what he did next changed everything. The morning had begun like most others for Cole Whitman on autopilot. Dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, he stepped out of the black SUV that had ferried him from his glass-walled downtown penthouse to the suburban charter school he quietly funded. His polished shoes clicked across the pristine tile floors as the head administrator greeted him with overly rehearsed enthusiasm. Cole nodded, barely registering the words. He wasn't here because he cared about PR or quarterly updates. If he was being honest with himself, which he rarely was, he was here because he couldn't stand another silent breakfast with his son. James hadn't spoken a word in nearly 6 weeks. Since Marissa died, since the long months of meltdowns and exhausted therapists, since the house had grown too big and too quiet, Cole's entire empire streamlined software, AI-enhanced productivity tools, precision automation hadn't brought him a single solution for the one problem he desperately needed to solve: reaching his son. And lately, the emptiness inside him had grown louder than even the endless meetings he used to lose himself in. This visit to the school wasn't on his schedule. It was an impulse, a quiet gasp for purpose. As the tour led him through the school's new STEM wing, Cole walked just behind the principal, only half listening to the statistics and curriculum improvements. His eyes kept drifting to the windows, the sunlight slicing through glass and reflecting off the polished floors. Then a sound, not quite a scream, not quite a cry, echoed faintly down the hallway. The principal paused. "Oh," she murmured awkwardly. "It's, probably nothing. Just a student with some challenges. We have protocols." But Cole was already turning. He moved briskly toward the cafeteria, past startled teachers and frozen aides. What he found at the entrance stopped him cold. There, in the middle of the tiled floor, was his son. James was crumpled in on himself, his small body rocking, fists pressed to his ears. His breathing was shallow, his face blotchy with panic. The fluorescent lights above flickered too harshly, the ambient noise of lunch trays and whispers too much. A circle of adults stood nearby, teachers, aides, even another parent, watching helplessly, no one daring to approach, except for one person, a little girl, maybe 8, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside him, blowing bubbles. She didn't speak, she didn't touch him. She simply sat, one hand cradling a small bottle of soap solution, the other dipping and raising a plastic wand again and again. Bubbles floated gently between them, catching the light. Soft spheres shimmered red, blue, gold, and burst soundlessly. James blinked. His breath slowed. One hand dropped from his ear. Another bubble rose, and his eyes followed it upward. Then, unbelievably, James reached toward the wand. Cole's heart stuttered. He wasn't sure when his hand had risen to his mouth, fingers trembling against his lips, or when the breath had caught so painfully in his chest. But something cracked wide open inside him, hope, raw and immediate. Weeks of specialists, consultants, and interventions had yielded nothing. And now, this. A girl with scuffed shoes and paint on her jeans. "The janitor's daughter," someone murmured. But Cole didn't hear them. He could only stare at the boy he loved more than anything, and the girl who had just done the impossible. "Who is she?" he whispered aloud, voice trembling. No one answered. No one needed to. He already knew this moment. This girl was going to change everything. Cole didn't speak during the car ride back to his downtown office tower. The silence in the back seat felt dense, as if even his driver had sensed the gravity of what had unfolded at the school. He sat stiffly, eyes fixed on the city blurring past the tinted windows, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. Bubbles. Shimmering, fragile bubbles. The kind of thing he would have once dismissed as childish, inconsequential, but not today. He'd watched his son unravel for weeks, slipping deeper into a world where Cole couldn't follow. And then that girl, Lila, had sat cross-legged on the floor like it was the most ordinary thing in the world, and somehow reached him in a way no expert had. She hadn't spoken. She hadn't touched him. She had simply existed in James's panic without fear. And James had come back. Back at Whitman Tower, Cole moved through the polished halls with his usual briskness, but something about him had changed. His assistant, Rachel, glanced up nervously as he approached, sensing something in his posture, something quieter, heavier. He didn't stop to explain. "Pull the student file on a girl named Lila Moore," he said curtly as he stepped into his office. "She's the janitor's daughter at Whitman Elementary. I want everything we've got." Less than 15 minutes later, a slim manila folder landed on his desk. It wasn't much. 3rd grade level. No disciplinary record. No therapist notes. No gifted student markers. Just average scores, perfect attendance, and a parent listed as Jenny Moore, custodian, Whitman maintenance staff. There were no red flags, no glowing achievements. Just a smiling ID photo of a girl with wild curls and gap teeth, grinning into the camera like it was her first time being seen. He flipped through the pages again, unsettled. There had to be something he was missing. People didn't just do what she did. Not at 8 years old. Not without training or trauma or some other explanation. This had to be a setup, a manipulation, and that's what sent him downstairs. The janitorial offices were tucked into the basement level of the tower functional, ignored. He didn't bother sending someone ahead. He wanted to see her for himself. Jenny Moore was emptying a mop bucket when he found her. Her back was to him, sleeves rolled up, ponytail damp with sweat, arms moving in practiced rhythm. She didn't notice him until he spoke. "Jenny Moore?" She turned, surprised but not startled. Her gaze locked onto his, calm, steady. "I'm Cole Whitman," he said unnecessarily. "I know who you are," she replied. No awe, no smile, just fact. He cut straight to it. "Your daughter Lila was with my son today. James, she helped him. I need to understand how." Jenny blinked. Not defensive, not impressed, just tired. "She was there because I couldn't afford a sitter. I work the morning shift before the buses let out, so she waits in the cafeteria with her backpack and her art kit. That's all." "Why him?" Cole pressed. "Why did she go to him? Did someone tell her to?" Her eyes narrowed just slightly, and he caught the flicker of offense. "She saw a kid in pain and sat beside him. That's it. No one trained her?" "She's 8, Mr. Whitman. She's not a service dog." His jaw clenched, not at her tone, but because part of him knew she was right. He'd expected something different. A trick, maybe. A kid coached by a parent who wanted a handout. But Jenny didn't carry herself like someone looking for favors. She looked like someone tired of being expected to beg. "I'm not here to accuse you," he said, a little softer now. I've tried everything. Doctors, therapists, devices, and then your daughter sits down with a bubble wand and... She used to be like him, Jenny said quietly. Cole stopped cold. She didn't talk until she was almost 5. Not a word. The doctors told me it might be permanent. We couldn't afford specialists, so I did what I could. Bubbles, lullabies, consistency. It took years. But one day, She opened her mouth and told me she liked the color blue. Her voice cracked for the first time. I still cry when I think about it. Cole looked at her then, not as a CEO or a problem solver, but as a man staring at someone who had survived a different kind of war. "We're not trying to get anything out of this," she said. "We don't ask for favors. We just do what we can." And that was it. No plea, no suggestion. Just a single mother mopping floors, raising a miracle and keeping her head down because life had never offered her anything for free. Cole left the basement slower than he'd entered. That night, after James had gone to bed, Cole sat alone in his study with a glass of scotch in one hand and his laptop open in front of him. He'd requested the cafeteria surveillance footage. Something in him needed to see it again, to make sure it had really happened. He pressed play. There she was. Lila, sitting down slowly beside his son, opening her bubble kit, dipping the wand, raising it, bubble, James screaming, then pausing. Another bubble, his shoulders relaxing, another bubble, and then James reaching out. Cole leaned closer, heart racing like it had that afternoon. Something ancient inside him stirred. Not just awe, but grief. Grief for all the times he hadn't known how to reach his own child. Grief for the wife who'd once believed in healing when he'd only believed in results. And then it happened. As the footage looped, James, sitting beside him on the couch, reached out and tapped the screen. He pointed. Then softly, barely above a whisper, "Bubble." The word hit Cole like a punch to the chest. He gasped. The glass slipped from his hand, hitting the carpet with a muffled thud. "Bubble," James repeated, his eyes fixed on the screen. Cole turned to him, tears rising fast and sharp. "Say it again, buddy. Please, say it again." James turned his head, eyes meeting his father's for the first time in weeks. "Bubble," he whispered, and smiled. Cole pulled him into his arms, heart cracking wide open. He held James tightly, rocking gently, as if the movement might hold everything together. His son had returned, and somehow, impossibly, it was all because of her. Lila Moore, just the janitor's kid, and the first light in their darkness. It was barely past 6 the next evening when Cole Whitman found himself standing in the dim hallway outside the maintenance wing of Whitman Elementary, a place he'd walked past 100 times but never truly seen. The air was different down here, stale, lined with the faint scent of floor wax and old paint. The bright glass architecture of the school's front facade didn't reach this far. There were no skylights or donor plaques, just a metal door with a peeling sticker that read, "Storage 3B, authorized staff only." He hesitated before knocking. He had called Jenny that morning. The conversation had been brief, bordering on awkward. "I'd like to visit," he said, "to see where she lives." There was a long pause on her end. Then, "It's not much. But if you're really that curious, fine." Now he was here. A billionaire standing in a janitor's makeshift apartment tucked behind a boiler room. The door opened before he knocked. Lila stood there, barefoot, her jeans rolled up, an oversized t-shirt hanging off one shoulder. Her curls were tied in 2 uneven puffs, and a streak of purple marker curved across her cheek. She blinked up at him with no fear, only quiet recognition. "Hi," she said simply. "You're James's dad." Cole nodded, momentarily speechless. Yeah, I'm Cole." "You're tall," she added, stepping aside to let him in. The room behind her wasn't an apartment, not by any legal definition. It had been a janitor's closet once. Now it was a survival space. 2 twin mattresses pushed against opposite walls, stacked milk crates for shelves, and a battered hot plate perched atop a mini-fridge. A string of fairy lights was draped across the low ceiling, softening the fluorescent harshness. On one wall, a hand-drawn poster read, "Home is where Mom is." Jenny emerged from the back, wiping her hands with a towel. "We make do," she said, her voice tired but not apologetic. Cole stepped inside carefully, as if afraid to break something sacred. "It's resourceful." "It's rent-free," she corrected. "Principal lets us stay since I cover night shifts and mornings. Saves them on alarm costs. I fix what breaks. They give me this." He looked around again. The concrete floor had been scrubbed until it shone. Lila's side of the room was lined with drawings, some bright and whimsical, others haunting in their detail. One showed a woman curled under a blanket with IV lines. Another, James surrounded by bubbles. "You did these?" he asked Lila, pointing. She nodded proudly. "I draw what I see, and what I wish." Jenny handed him a mug of weak coffee. "We don't have much, but we've got manners." He took it gratefully, fingers brushing hers for the briefest second. "Thanks." They sat on crates fashioned into stools. Lila plopped down on her mattress and began coloring silently, humming under her breath, a tune that sounded suspiciously like the bubble song she'd made up the other day. Cole watched her quietly. Something tugged at him. Not pity, not discomfort, something else. Respect. This wasn't just survival, it was art, love, grit. He'd spent millions building environments for optimal learning, complete with AI tutors and sensory walls. But this was lived-in resilience. "She doesn't know she's special," Jenny said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I'm scared to tell her. Because people like us, we don't get to be special for long." Cole's chest tightened. He looked over at Lila, who was now tracing James's name in purple glitter glue. "She is," he said. "Special, I mean." Jenny didn't answer. She didn't have to. Later that night, back in his penthouse, Cole watched James roll a tennis ball back and forth on the hardwood floor. His son hadn't had a meltdown in 2 days. That was unheard of. Even his speech therapist had noted a difference: calmer eye contact, softer vocalizations, a new gentleness in how he touched things. But there was a cost to that peace. Tonight, James had refused to eat. He kept looking toward the door, mumbling something unintelligible, and growing more agitated by the minute. "James," Cole said softly, crouching beside him. "What is it, buddy?" James looked up with pleading eyes and whispered a word that sounded like Lila. His fingers tapped the floor in rhythm. Then he grabbed Cole's wrist with urgency and began flapping his other hand wildly, vocalizing in high-pitched syllables. Cole froze. This wasn't a tantrum. This was grief. Panic. James needed her. By 7:45 a.m., Cole was back at the school, standing under a street lamp with James bundled in a jacket beside him. Jenny opened the door this time, a mix of surprise and suspicion on her face. "He wouldn't sleep," Cole said, a little breathless. He kept calling for her. Lila stepped out from behind her mother, rubbing her eyes. "James?" The boy lit up. He ran forward, awkward, beautiful, uncoordinated, and crashed into her with a soft whimper. She hugged him back. No questions asked. Jenny opened the door wider. They all sat together in the tiny room while Lila showed James a new drawing she'd made of the bubble room, a fantasy version with rainbow walls and beanbags shaped like clouds. Cole watched them from a milk crate in the corner, his heart stretched between awe and ache. "How do you do it?" he asked Jenny quietly. She sipped her coffee. "I don't. She does." "Jenny, he said carefully. What you've built here, it shouldn't be necessary. You shouldn't have to raise a child in a janitor's closet. She didn't flinch. Tell me something I don't know. I want to help, he said. Really help. For her. For James. Her eyes narrowed slightly, protective. You want to own it? No, Cole said. I want to be part of it. The silence between them settled like a shared understanding. Not a contract. Not a promise. Just something beginning. As he rose to leave, Lila handed him a folded piece of paper. It's for James, she said, but she looked directly at Cole. In crayon, it showed 3 stick figures under a swirl of bubbles. One small, one slightly bigger, and one in a blue suit with square shoulders. They were holding hands. Cole stared at it for a long moment, his throat thick. He looked at Lila. Is that me? She shrugged. You were there. It was the kindest acknowledgement he'd received in years. As he walked back to the car with James asleep on his shoulder, Cole felt something unfamiliar rise in his chest. Hope. Not the manufactured kind from tech forecasts and media profiles. The kind that came from being seen and choosing to stay. The following Monday, Cole stood in the corner of a quiet conference room at Whitman Elementary, his phone pressed loosely to his ear. His assistant on the other end recited the morning's schedule, but his attention remained fixed on the window. Outside, across the small campus courtyard, he could see a splash of curls and a bubble wand catching the sun. Lila. She was sitting on the ground beside James, who was carefully holding a laminated card in his hands, a square with a yellow sun drawn on it, and the word happy printed in bold beneath. Lila pointed to it, then smiled. James mimicked her gesture, the tiniest grin twitching at the corner of his mouth. He hadn't seen James react to another person like that since Marissa. Cole swallowed hard. Reschedule everything before noon, he told his assistant, and call my legal team. I want a scholarship agreement drafted. Full tuition, after-school program, supplies, meals, everything. That afternoon, he met Jenny outside the school. She was pushing a janitor's cart filled with disinfectant and paper towels. Her sleeves rolled up and her face flushed from hours of work. Chakiao, I want Lila to join James's class, Cole said without preamble. Not just visit, enroll, full-time if she's willing. Jenny froze, one hand still gripping the mop handle. You're joking. He shook his head. She doesn't need to do anything extra. Just be herself. But she belongs there. Jenny stared at him, eyes narrowing. What do you want from us? Nothing, he said simply. This isn't a transaction. She crossed her arms. You expect me to believe that? That a man like you just decides to give a girl like her a chance? I don't expect you to believe anything, Cole replied, his voice low. But I've watched her do more for my son in a week than professionals have done in 6 months. That's not luck. That's something real, and I want to honor it. Jenny didn't move, but her shoulders softened slightly. It's not charity, he added. It's a beginning. That night, Lila sat at the kitchen counter. If you could call the shelf beside the mini-fridge a kitchen folding a new set of construction paper cards. Each one had a different face drawn on it. Happy. Sad. Madam Calm. James likes the blue ones best, she told her mom. Jenny watched her, a strange mixture of pride and fear stirring inside her. Why do you do this for him? Lila shrugged. Because he reminds me of me, before. Jenny's breath caught. Before what, baby? Before I could say things, Lila answered. When the world was too loud, and only bubbles made sense. She returned to her work, humming that familiar tune. The next morning, Cole walked them both into the school. Lila held James's hand the whole way. It was the first time Cole had ever seen his son willingly touch someone who wasn't him. They headed to the newly renovated bubble room, a bright space converted from an unused supply closet. Now it was filled with soft rugs, bean bags, weighted blankets, and dozens of bubble wands lined neatly on the shelf. The walls were painted soft pastel tones, and a sign above the door, drawn by Lila, read, "Feelings are bubbles. Let them float." James walked in like it was a sacred space. Lila guided him to a corner and opened the cards. "This one is yellow. That's happy," she said gently. James pointed, then nodded. Cole stood frozen near the doorway, watching. He didn't know when the tears started, but they slid down without shame. Later, he sat on a bench outside with Jenny. The sunlight filtered through the trees, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like running from the stillness. "She told me she didn't speak until she was 5, he said. Jenny nodded. "That's true. How did you get her through it?" he asked. Jenny leaned back, her gaze distant. "I didn't have the money for therapy, so I sang to her, blew bubbles, waited, held her when she screamed, drew pictures with her on the floor. She came back on her own time." Cole exhaled slowly. "It sounds impossible." Jenny smiled faintly. "It was just love and patience." He looked at her then, not as someone beneath him or someone to fix, but as a woman who had done the unimaginable with nothing but grit and devotion. Later that week, as he picked James up from school, his son ran toward him holding a folded sheet of construction paper. It was a drawing. 3 figures stood together under a sky of floating bubbles. One was tiny with curls, another with short dark hair and blue eyes, and beside them, a tall figure in a blue suit. Cole unfolded it slowly, his fingers trembling. "Who's this?" he asked gently, even though he already knew. James pointed at each in turn. "Lila. Me. You." Cole swallowed the lump in his throat. "And what are we doing?" James grinned, bright, open, radiant. "Playing." Cole held the picture to his chest and closed his eyes. There were no contracts, no mergers, no market projections that could ever match the value of what this little boy had just given him. At bedtime, after James had fallen asleep with Lila's yellow card tucked under his pillow, Cole sat alone in the dark living room, holding the drawing under the lamplight. It wasn't just paper and crayon. It was connection. It was belonging. It was a beginning. The morning sunlight filtered through the large windows of the bubble room, casting soft yellow rectangles on the playmat as James sat cross-legged on the floor, a blue card resting between his knees. Across from him, Lila leaned against a beanbag shaped like a cloud, holding up a picture book and mimicking the facial expressions of each illustrated emotion. Cole stood just outside the doorway, his coffee cooling in his hand. He had become a regular presence here now, quiet, still somewhat out of place in his pressed shirts and polished shoes, but no longer merely observing. Every morning, after drop-off, he stayed. At first, it was under the guise of monitoring the environment, but now he knew better. He stayed because this was the one place where he saw his son come alive. Today, though, something was different. As Lila flipped to a page showing a little boy blowing bubbles, James pointed excitedly and reached for the shelf where dozens of bubble wands were lined up like tools of magic. He handed one to Cole. The room fell quiet. Lila looked up, blinking. "You've never blown one before." Cole felt oddly nervous. Can't be that hard, right? He dipped the wand into the solution and lifted it to his lips. On the first try, he blew too hard, sending a spray of soapy mist across the room. James giggled, a full, unguarded sound that made Cole freeze in surprise. On the second try, a lopsided bubble emerged, wobbling in the air before popping mid-flight. Lila clapped her hands softly. "Not bad," she said. By the fourth try, Cole managed a perfect round bubble that floated upward and hovered just above James's head. James looked up, wide-eyed, tracking it with his hands outstretched. Cole couldn't stop smiling. He sat down on the rug next to them, jacket wrinkling against the soft mat, and passed the wand back to James. As the boy dipped and blew, more bubbles filled the air, some big, some small, some rising, others sinking, but all of them beautiful. In that moment, it didn't matter how much money Cole had, or what company he ran, or how out of his depth he felt as a father. This was enough. Later that afternoon, it rained. Cole offered Jenny and Lila a ride home. The inside of his black SUV had never felt more crowded or more full of life. Lila pressed her forehead to the fogged-up window, tracing hearts and stick figures in the condensation. Jenny sat quietly in the passenger seat, her hands resting on a tote bag filled with Lila's books and handmade flashcards. As they reached the intersection near the school, the red light stalled them for a moment longer than usual. Raindrops pattered steadily against the windshield, the rhythm comforting in its steadiness. Jenny broke the silence. "You're different now." Cole raised an eyebrow. "Am I?" "You used to wear that look," she said, gesturing at his face, "like you were bracing yourself for impact. Now you just look here." He glanced at her. "I think I'm still figuring out what here means," she nodded, understanding. "That's the hard part, showing up." They rode in silence for another block. Then, as if prompted by nothing at all, Cole said, "I missed Marissa's last birthday." Jenny turned toward him, surprised by the sudden vulnerability. "I was in Dubai," he continued, voice tight. "Closing a deal. I told myself I'd make it up to her. I didn't." Jenny looked down at her lap. "I buried myself in work after she passed," he said. "Told myself James needed structure, stability. But what he needed was someone who didn't treat him like a puzzle to be solved." Jenny's voice was soft when she replied, "We all have regrets, Cole. But you're showing up now. That counts." He nodded, swallowing hard. When they arrived at the school's back entrance where the maintenance quarters were, Lila turned to him and handed over a folded paper. "Don't read it until you're home," she said solemnly. Cole smiled. "Got it." That night, after James fell asleep with a bubble wand still clutched in one hand, Cole unfolded Lila's paper at the kitchen counter. It was an essay, written in crayon and pencil. "If I could buy anything," it read, "it wouldn't be toys or candy. It would be someone to believe in my mom. Because she always believes in me, even when no one else does." He didn't realize he was crying until the ink at the bottom of the page blurred slightly. All the venture capital, all the IPO wins, all the polished conference keynotes. None of it had ever hit him like this. It wasn't just what the words said. It was what they didn't say. This child had learned, so young, what it felt like to be unseen. And her mother had held the line, had stayed strong in the shadows so her daughter could shine. Cole folded the letter carefully, like it was something sacred, and placed it inside the leather folder he used for board meetings. Then he made a call. The next morning, he pulled Jenny aside before her shift. "I'm not trying to fix anything," he said, "but I have an idea." She raised an eyebrow, skeptical but curious. "I want you to run a new program, a support center in partnership with the district, a space for kids like James, for parents like you. You'd be in charge. She blinked. You're serious? Dead serious. And what do I have to do to earn it? Just keep doing what you've already done, he replied, which is everything. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. As he walked away, he heard her call after him. Cole? He turned. Thank you for seeing us, not just looking, seeing. He smiled. You made it impossible not to. And for the first time in years, he realized something profound. He didn't need to be the man with all the answers. He just needed to keep blowing bubbles. The auditorium was alive with chatter, the hum of anticipation vibrating beneath the rows of folding chairs and hanging paper stars. It was family night at Whitman Elementary, the first since the school had reopened its community programming with Cole's new sponsorship. Tonight's event, a short play called The Sky Inside Us, written and performed by the students. Nothing fancy, just kids in cardboard costumes and face paint, reciting lines under a too bright spotlight. But to Cole, it felt bigger than any shareholder summit he'd ever hosted. He sat near the front, his suit jacket folded neatly over the back of his chair, a program clenched loosely in his hand. On the creased cover, James's name was printed just one word, listed next to the part Bubble Number 3. It made Cole smile. His son, who hadn't spoken in over a month just weeks ago, now had a moment on stage, a small role, one wave. That was all they asked of him. But to Cole, it was everything. Beside him, Jenny smoothed the hem of her dark green dress borrowed, she admitted, from the school's theater closet. Lila sat between them, fidgeting slightly, her curls pulled into two puffed buns, a light sheen of glitter across her cheeks. In her lap was the familiar bubble wand, her fingers tapping it like a metronome. She wasn't in the play, she had declined the offer, but insisted on being backstage to support James. She'd promised to be waiting in the wings with her wand if he got scared. I told him, she whispered earlier, if he walks on stage, I'll make a bubble big enough to carry him to the moon. Cole hadn't been sure whether to laugh or cry. He just nodded. The lights dimmed. The show began. James's class came out halfway through. Children shaped like raindrops, clouds, and lightning bolts waddled across the stage, giggling and tripping over their cardboard creations. And then, from the edge of the curtain, came James. He moved slowly, his steps hesitant, then steadier. He reached center stage and paused. The spotlight caught his face. His arms stiffened for a beat, then lifted. He waved, just once. But the auditorium erupted in gentle applause, a rolling tide of warmth and pride. Cole felt his chest burst wide open. His son had done it. He rose to his feet slowly, hands pressed together, his eyes blurry. James stood frozen for a second, then smiled, a real, unguarded smile, and turned to walk off stage. Cole sat down again, overcome. Jenny leaned closer, whispering, "You okay?" He nodded, too choked up to answer. Then chaos. A thud. Gasps. A scream that sounded all too real. Cole shot up. Lila. She'd been just off stage, and now her small frame was crumpled near the side curtain, her bubble wand rolling across the wooden floor. For a second, the world stopped. Cole didn't remember moving, just the sensation of his legs propelling him forward, of teachers stepping back, of someone shouting for help. He reached her in seconds, kneeling beside her as she lay on her side, one hand curled against her chest. Lila, look at me," he begged, his voice hoarse. Her eyelids fluttered. Jenny was suddenly there too, dropping to her knees. "She has a condition, her heart." Oh God, she hasn't complained in weeks. I didn't think. Paramedics were called. The crowd was hushed now, the play forgotten. James stood at the edge of the stage, frozen. Then his lower lip trembled, and he called out, voice cracking, "Lila!" The first time he'd ever said her name aloud. Cole turned just as the boy stepped down off the stage and rushed forward. Jenny tried to hold him back, but James dropped beside Lila, took her hand, and whispered, "Don't go." His voice broke on the second word. Cole reached over and wrapped both of them in his arms. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not his reputation, not the wide eyes watching him, not the cameras a few parents had instinctively lifted. There were no titles here, no power plays, just a man, a boy, and a girl lying limp in the middle of a school auditorium. The ambulance ride was a blur. Cole insisted on going with her. Jenny climbed in beside them, holding her daughter's hand while Cole cradled James, who sobbed quietly into his chest. The lights of the city blurred by through the rear windows, flashing like a heartbeat. In the emergency room, it was a frenzy: machines, questions, wires. Cole barely registered the nurses asking about medical history or whether he was family. He just nodded and signed whatever was put in front of him. "She has a congenital condition," Jenny explained to the attending physician. "She had surgery when she was a baby. They said it was stable. But she's been dizzy lately," Cole added, recalling how she'd leaned against the wall 2 days ago. "And tired. She said it was nothing." James sat beside them, pale and silent. He held Lila's drawing in his lap, a crumpled paper showing the three of them under a swirl of colored bubbles. Hours passed. Cole paced the hallway, his phone buzzing with missed calls and texts he ignored. At one point, Jenny brought him a paper cup of coffee, her hand brushing his lightly. "She'll be okay," she whispered. "You don't know that." "No," she said, her voice quiet. "But I have to believe it. That's what moms do." He stared at her for a long moment, then reached out and gently took her hand. They sat together in silence. When the doctor finally emerged, his expression was grave but hopeful. "She's stable," he said. "We're running tests, but she responded to treatment. You can sit with her once we move her upstairs." Relief slammed into Cole like a tidal wave. He dropped into a chair, head in his hands. Jenny squeezed his shoulder. "She's strong," she murmured. "Stubborn, like her mom." Later, as they entered the hospital room together, Cole paused at the door. Lila lay motionless, pale against the crisp sheets, an IV in her arm, the familiar wand on the bedside table. James climbed onto the edge of the bed, curled beside her gently, and whispered something Cole couldn't hear. Jenny stood at the foot of the bed, eyes damp but steady. Cole moved to her side and whispered, "I'm not going anywhere." She turned toward him. Neither of them smiled, but neither of them had to. They understood now. This wasn't just about James or Lila anymore. This was family, messy, fragile, fought for. And Cole knew, down to his bones, that he would do anything to keep it, even if it meant building a new life from the shattered pieces of the old. Cole didn't sleep that night. Not in the chair beside Lila's hospital bed. Not in the lounge. Not even in the silent hallway where he paced for hours. He couldn't. His thoughts spun too fast. His heart too raw. He'd sat through all-nighters negotiating billion-dollar acquisitions, but nothing had ever gripped him like this. Every beep of the monitor, every soft shift of Lila's chest rising and falling, felt like the whole world balancing on a thread. Jenny had dozed off in a chair at Lila's side, her head tilted against the wall, arms crossed tightly as if bracing herself even in sleep. Cole watched her for a long moment before stepping out into the corridor and pulling out his phone. He didn't hesitate. "Get me Dr. Lennox, cardiology, Boston Private. I want a full review of Lila Moore's file stat. Yes, override authorization if needed. No, I don't care if it's 4 a.m. He made 4 more calls before sunrise. One to a pediatric cardiologist in New York, another to a private medical jet company, and 2 to top-level hospital board contacts who owed him favors. He didn't ask for discounts. He didn't ask for approval. He demanded solutions. When he stepped back into the room an hour later, a nurse was checking Lila's vitals. Jenny stirred awake at the sound, her eyes fluttering open. Cole leaned down beside her and whispered, "Specialists are on the way. She's going to get the best care. No waiting lists, no insurance paperwork." Jenny blinked at him. "How?" "I pulled every string I have," he said. "This isn't about money anymore." "It never was," she said gently. He paused, then quietly, "I know that now." By mid-morning, Lila had been moved to a private suite on the 10th floor. The room had floor-to-ceiling windows, warm wood paneling, and a couch that folded out into a bed. James sat curled beside her, holding her hand and tracing little shapes on her arm with his finger. He hadn't spoken again since last night, but he hadn't let go of her either. Cole stood at the foot of the bed, watching them both. "She asked for him first," the nurse said softly. "Even before her mom." He turned to Jenny, who nodded, her eyes full. They're each other's safe place now. Later that afternoon, a social worker arrived, a gentle woman named Mara with kind eyes and a clipboard full of state forms. She'd heard about the emergency through hospital channels and wanted to discuss long-term care and guardianship options. Jenny met her in the hallway, while Cole kept watch over the kids. "So what does he want?" Mara asked quietly, gesturing toward Cole. Jenny leaned against the wall, folding her arms. "To help. That's what he says." Mara arched a brow. "And what do you believe?" Jenny sighed. "I believe he's scared and honest. For once, someone with everything to lose is acting like we're the thing he can't afford to lose." Mara flipped through her forms. "Have you considered letting him stay in the picture?" Jenny looked through the window at Cole, at the way he gently placed a blanket over James's shoulders without waking him, how he brushed a curl from Lila's forehead. "I'm not sure he even realizes he's already in it." That evening, Cole sat with Jenny outside the recovery suite, sipping hospital coffee from a paper cup. It tasted like cardboard, but neither of them cared. "I didn't plan any of this," he said quietly. "I know," she said. "I came to that school because I was tired of pretending I had answers, because James was slipping away, because I couldn't breathe in my own house." Jenny looked at him, really looked. "And now?" "Now I don't want to go back to how it was." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she pulled something from her tote bag. It was a folded piece of paper, one of Lila's drawings. 3 figures again. Lila, James, and the man in the blue suit. But this time, there was a fourth, a woman with curly hair, standing beside the man, holding his hand. Cole stared at it. Jenny said softly, "She sees you." His voice caught. "Do you?" She didn't answer right away. Then, "I'm starting to." That night, after Jenny and James had fallen asleep, Cole sat alone beside Lila's bed, watching the machines hum and blink. Her breathing was steady now, her color better. But it wasn't just the medical stability that moved him. It was the sheer resilience in that tiny frame, the strength she carried like it was weightless. He leaned forward and whispered, I'm not going anywhere, Lila. You've done more for us than you'll ever know. You gave my son his voice. You gave me mine." The next morning, Lila opened her eyes. Barely, slowly. But they fluttered open and found his face first. She blinked. "Cole." He smiled through the tears that came too quickly. "Hey, Bubble Girl." She tried to smile. "James?" He's right here," he said, scooping the sleeping boy from the chair and gently laying him beside her. James stirred, then nestled in without waking. Jenny stepped into the doorway, her eyes wet. Lila reached for her mother's hand, then Cole's. "Are we a family now?" she asked sleepily. Cole swallowed hard. "If you want us to be." "I do." It wasn't a contract. It wasn't signed in ink, but in that hospital room with wires, blankets, crayons, and courage, it was sealed. Not by obligation, but by choice. A year passed, not in a blur, but in a series of quiet, meaningful moments, some hard, some tender, most entirely unexpected. The city changed with the seasons, but inside a renovated corner of Whitman Tower's education wing, a new kind of life had taken root. The sign on the frosted glass door read, "Whitman Center for Emotional Learning and Support." It was Jenny's idea. Cole had simply supplied the funding. The rooms inside were bright, warm, and filled with texture-soft rugs, tactile walls, shelves of books and sensory toys, and of course, a bubble room. This one had windows and beanbag clouds, too. Lila had insisted. James came here 3 days a week. Not because he had to, but because he loved to. Sometimes he worked with therapists, other times with Lila. Most often, he simply played bubbles, flashcards, art. Lila was no longer just his calming friend. She had become something deeper. His compass. Cole came often, too. At first, he told himself it was oversight, then routine, then finally, the truth. He came because he needed it. Because watching Lila draw rainbows on the walls while James narrated his feelings through color cards reminded him of what mattered most. Because in that room, he wasn't a CEO or a problem solver. He was just a man who had finally stopped running. One afternoon in early spring, as cherry blossoms bloomed along the sidewalk outside, Cole stepped into the lounge to find Jenny organizing a stack of parent welcome kits. She looked up with a half smile and brushed her hair from her face. She'd changed too. The weight she carried in her posture was lighter now, her movements less guarded. She no longer braced for bad news. She expected good things, even if she still triple-checked them. "Busy day?" Cole asked, setting a coffee beside her elbow. "Always," she said, taking a grateful sip. "But worth it." They sat for a while in the warmth of the afternoon sun, listening to the faint giggles from down the hall. "You know," Jenny said, "you're here more than most parents, even the ones who live 5 minutes away." "I don't like missing the important stuff," Cole replied. Jenny raised an eyebrow. "Like Tuesday's bubble-blowing contest?" He smiled. "Especially that." They shared a laugh, the kind that came easily now. There had been no grand declarations between them, no official labels. But they had built something steady week by week, word by word, something stronger than romance, something rooted in presence. Just then, the door flew open, and James burst in, cheeks flushed, Lila on his heels. "Dad!" James shouted, holding up a bright blue card. "I won!" Cole turned, startled, Dad. It was still new, still made his chest twist in the best way. "You did?" he asked, kneeling. "What was the contest?" "Biggest bubble. I made one this big." James stretched his arms dramatically. Lila giggled. "He cheated. He used double soap." "Strategic thinking," Cole said, grinning. I'm proud of you. Lila handed him a folded card. It's early, she said, but I couldn't wait. Cole opened it. Inside was a crayon drawing. Him, Jenny, Lila, and James standing in a park beneath a bright yellow sun. Above them, in big purple letters, it read, Happy Father's Day. Beneath it, in smaller print, Thank you for seeing the real me. Cole blinked fast. He tried to say something, but couldn't. Not at first. He looked at Jenny. She nodded gently, her eyes glistening. He turned back to Lila. That's the greatest title I've ever had. Even better than CEO? She teased. He laughed. By a mile. That night, the four of them sat on a picnic blanket in the park near Jenny and Lila's new apartment, an airy space in a quiet neighborhood that Cole had found, but insisted she choose. James kicked a soccer ball across the grass, while Lila blew bubbles, chasing the biggest ones with a giggle that had become his favorite sound in the world. Cole sat beside Jenny, elbows touching. They watched in silence for a while. Did you ever think it would feel like this? He asked. Like peace? She replied. No, I didn't think we got to have that. We do now, he said. She nodded, then leaned her head gently against his shoulder. As the sun dipped low and the park began to empty, Lila ran up to him with one final bubble wand in her hand. Last one, she said. It's for you. She dipped it, raised it, and blew. The bubble floated upward, catching the sunset light. James reached for it, but it popped mid-air, and he laughed. Cole watched the two of them spin and dance in the fading orange glow, the sound of their laughter stitching something permanent into his soul. He turned to Jenny. She didn't just save my son, he said quietly. She saved me too. Jenny didn't answer. She just reached for his hand and held it tightly. And together, they watched their children run across the grass, fearless and free, beneath a sky filled with bubbles and the promise of tomorrow. What an incredible journey for Cole, James, and Lila. A beautiful testament to how love can blossom in the most unexpected places, healing old wounds and creating new hope. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even small acts of kindness can change everything, please take a moment to give this video a like and share it with someone who needs a little warmth today. And for more stories of resilience, transformation, and the power of human connection, you'll find other videos we think you'll love right here on your screen. We cherish your presence in our community. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.